Hello and welcome to the show. Now, even if you have only a passing interest in cars, it is almost impossible not to like Rallycross. With the mixture of surfaces, the jumps and the general craziness of the cars that goes on with it, it is a fantastic motorsport series. Even this Volkswagen Beetle, I don't like the Beetle. I really don't particularly like the Beetle. Not even the modern ones. Even this looks the part. It looks suitably crazy with a humongous rear wing and all the body kits. And yeah, in general, the cars, whether it be the Beetle, the Imprezas, the Fiestas, whatever it may be that's racing at the top level, the cars are really rather crazy and really rather fantastic. The engines that go into them are equally crazy. This Beetle has a 1.6 litre engine. My road car has a bigger engine than this. However, it has 536 horsepower. My road car certainly doesn't have that much power. 387 torque. That is a stupendous amount of power out of a very, very little engine. On the weight front, we're talking about 2,600 pounds in this car. Maybe a little bit more than I was actually expecting from a Rallycross car, but it's still pretty damn light. And with that much power and with a fancy four-wheel drive system, of course, it is very, very fast. 0 to 60, the game reckons 0 to 60 takes 3 seconds. I think that's rather conservative. I'm pretty sure this car will go quicker from 0 to 60. I'm pretty sure Ken Block had his Rallycross car outdrag Hamilton's Formula 1 car. Off the line, look, the Formula 1 car is going to be quicker, but off the line, I'm pretty sure the Rallycross car was quicker than a Formula 1 car. These things are monstrously fast. 0 to 100, 6.5 seconds. I mean, we're talking very, very much supercar statistics here on this vehicle. Top speed, it will top out at 151 miles an hour, but that is mostly because the gear ratios are kept nice and short. The tracks that Rallycross cars run on are very short and very technical, so you don't need big, long gear ratios. And for the tracks that you are likely to find on Horizon 2, you're also not going to need them. If you're taking this to Storm Island, which is where we're racing here, you're not going to need particularly long gear ratios. And when it comes to the corners, the Beetle is a very easy car to drive, in all honesty. Yes, you can chuck it around and get lots of sliding if that is what you want, but if you want to drive sensibly, there is also plenty of grip. These corners coming up here are very fast, and there's a big change of direction through here, and the Beetle has no problems with it, provided you're not an utter moron. And when you do put it on the tarmac, for the first corner here, if you like, it's still got a huge amount of grip. Very, very easy to drive quickly. Brakes are very good and everything. Yeah, the Beetle is a fantastic car. However, it did get me thinking, could I get a car to go quicker while still using a 1.6 litre engine? So I set off with a little test. I've got the cars here in reverse order of the fastest laps that they set. The Beetle set a 57.743. That was the target for this Civic Type R, and I had initially had high hopes for the Civic. I mean, this car, when built, still using the Civic standard engine, has got 503 horsepower. That's not that far off the Beetle. 302 torque, okay, we're a little bit down on torque, and 2,500 pounds, so it's a little bit lighter. And I like this car. The Civic is a great car. This particular generation of Civic, if you like, is a fantastic handling car. Very, very good fun to drive. However, as the Rallycross car, four-wheel drive, these vehicles were also made four-wheel drive. And as we've seen a few times, converting front-wheel drive cars to four-wheel drive and then taking said car off-road can cause some problems. And it basically ruined the handling of the Civic. Each vehicle was given 5 laps around this track to set as fast a lap time as possible. Of course, had absolutely no problems with the Beetle. The Civic, even me trying to be careful. This is me, after the first few laps I was really, really struggling. This was me trying to be careful with the car. The back end just lets go. On the Civic, there is not enough rear end grip in this car. Of all the times I've done various time trialing series, I've always been able to get a good lap within 5 laps. This Civic is the first car that I have failed to actually get a clean lap. That is how bad it was to drive, as we have another spin across the line. The Type R was, it just didn't work. and I'm going to park it in a bush, which is about where it deserves. The Civic was a complete flop. Up next, a slightly different contender, the Mini. This has got the turbo rally engine, so 433 horsepower, not as much as the Beetle, but we do have 480 torque. So we've got 100 more torque than we got from the Beetle. Oh, and we're almost £1,000 lighter in the Mini, £1,700 in this car. The Mini on paper stands a pretty good shot at beating the Beetle. However, when we take it around the track, we have a few issues. And again, it's down to the handling. Yes, in a straight line and accelerating, this thing is incredibly quick because it doesn't weigh anything. But then we come to the corners and it all starts to fall apart a little bit. Again, it's another front-wheel drive car converted to four-wheel drive, and while not as bad as the Civic, I don't think anything could be as bad as the Civic. There are still some handling issues, shall we say, with the back of the car. Now, when we're going past those barrels, if the car is very difficult to drive, you will see me going to the left with the barrels. If the car is much easier to drive, you go to the right. I think the line on the right, you can probably take a little bit better line into the next corner, but cars that are very oversteery don't like it. They have issues. So, yeah, you'll see, if I'm going to the left of the barrels, it means we have some handling issues. It's not much slower doing that, but it is a lot safer. The Mini, you just can't take the corner speed that you could with the Beetle. The grip is just not there in this car. I mean, it hasn't got the biggest of tyres, and that's also one of the factors that isn't helping it. It's got nowhere near the same size tyres as the Beetle, and I just can't take the corner speed with the car. You'll see on the screen here, best lap, 1 minute 2.5. Yeah, it's... It was difficult to drive, but it was a lot quicker than the Civic. We're still a long way off the Beetle's time, though. Up next, we've got the modern Mini. Now, I am not a huge fan of the modern Mini. However, this car does drive, when it's standard, amazingly. This is a lovely car to drive. Really very, very good fun. It is another front-wheel drive converted to four-wheel drive, so there was a little bit of concern about that, but Mini wasn't particularly bad. As far as the power goes, well, this has got the Mini standard engine. Maxed out, we're talking, well, not quite maxed out because I can't do the engine displacement upgrade, so I've got to keep it as a 1.6 or lower. This has got 436 horsepower, so it's 100 down on the Beetle, 373 torque, roughly the same. However, weight, is again roughly the same, £2,600. Now, I wasn't expecting the Mini here to really stand a chance of seriously challenging the Beetle, because the weight is about the same, the torque is about the same, and we're 100 horsepower down. It is never likely to challenge a Beetle. Also, when we look at PI, this car that I'm driving here is the very top of S1 class at 900, whereas the Beetle is like 936. So, yeah, the Beetle has got a little bit of an advantage over the Mini, and sure enough, I wasn't going to get particularly close to its time. It drove okay. It was still a little bit prone to having oversteer moments, this car. It was still a little bit slidey. You can't quite carry the corner speed. I think that's my fastest lap I did with it, 1 minute 1.7. So yeah, I mean, we're 4 seconds down on the Beetle's time. You don't quite have the corner speed, and you don't quite have the power, the acceleration out of the turns. Up next, this is a bit of a wild card thing that I threw in here for good measure. The Lotus 11, only 290 horsepower in this car, 235 torque, so we are well down on power, we are well down on torque. However, we are very light, 1,365 pounds. So yeah, power to weight ratio is still pretty good on the Lotus. Putting it up to four-wheel drive does make the car rather heavier. I mean, this thing is borderline £1,000 when it's kept rear-wheel drive, but still, you know, we're talking ridiculously lightweight on this car. PI-wise, this is the lowest PI of all the cars that I had, 889 on this vehicle. Again, the tyres are on the rather diddy side with this car. I can't quite remember the tyre width, but they are not particularly big. Again, you'll see me taking the inside line past them barrels. We just don't have, again, much like the previous cars we've seen so far, you just don't quite have the grip. It's not a massively twitchy, it's not suddenly going to go really very sideways and spin you around in a circle like the Civic would, but it's just, you know, you can't quite get the same corner speed out of the vehicle. You can't quite carry the same momentum around the turns. The little Lotus, I mean, this is not a particularly bumpy course. There are a few bumps, but on the whole, this course It's pretty straightforward. And we've got the fast first corner to deal with as well. And the Lotus had no problems with the off-roady bits, it just wasn't quite as quick. Again, another car, I didn't really expect this to seriously challenge the Beetle. It's quite a long way down on PI. I've got another Lotus up next, the Lotus Cortina. This one has got the turbo rally engine again, so 433 horsepower, 479 torque. So power's a bit down, torque is quite a lot more than our target car. Weight, pretty low as well in this, 2,100 pounds for the Cortina. I was thinking this stands a sensible chance of at least coming near. This was the first car that that I had here that, yeah, this sort of has a sensible chance. I may have got things a little bit wrong. Yeah, them trees on the outside of that corner are a real pain. A couple of times I had to take avoiding action around the outside of them. Yeah, this car, again, much like the Lotus 11, it was a pretty good vehicle. There was no real problems with the car as such. It was pretty good on the grip front. It was pretty good on the brake front. It just wasn't quite as quick. You just couldn't quite get the same speed out of this car as you could. Okay, I'm trying to carry speed through that turn there, and we're just wandering off towards the wall. Both the Lotuses start off as rear-wheel drive, so making them four-wheel drive, they don't become hugely twitchy. You can see I'm going around the outside of the barrels there without any real issue with this car. It's a little bit rougher on that route. There's probably the only smallest jump on the course. This is the big test for the cars actually. If they can get through here quickly, that tends to suggest the car's quite good, and the Cortina wasn't too bad through there. I mean, that's pretty quick through that section of corners. Again, not quite the grip. Don't think we had particularly huge tyre widths to play with on this car, but yeah, it felt good to drive. It didn't set a blisteringly fast lap time though, a 1 minute 0.2. We're still a little bit down on the Beetle. I was expecting the Cortina to be a little bit quicker. Up next, we've got the Mugen CRX. Now, this was another front-wheel drive car, and after the disaster that had been the Civic, I was concerned about this vehicle. We're a little bit down on power as well for the Mugen. 409 horsepower, 300 torques, and 2,000 pounds. It's one of the lowest horsepower cars that we have here. Again, quite low on torque. Yes, it is light, but yeah, it didn't have like the power figures on this car weren't the most impressive. But besides being a front-wheel drive to four-wheel drive conversion, I had little issues with the CRX. A nice car to drive. I mean, I know these things are pretty damn fast. When it comes to Forza 5, I've seen quite a few very, very fast. I think I've raced one a couple of times. They can be very, very fast because they don't weigh particularly much. It was a little bit on the oversteer side. You see the braking zone here. It's a little bit scary. Again, I'm going to the inside of the barrels just to make sure I don't do something stupid with this car. When pushed very, very hard, the back end will wiggle around a little bit, but again, I'm having to make sure I'm a bit slower through these than I could have been with the Cortina. You'll see it's sliding around, can't quite carry that same corner speed, but it was very fast on the acceleration out of the turns as we come up towards crossing the line. This is the first car to get under the minutes, 58.674. That puts it within a second of the Beetle. Not a bad showing for the CRX, being a front-wheel drive to four-wheel drive conversion. And yeah, the figures, I would never have put it up there right at the very top, but it did do pretty well. Our next car, the A86. Never really played around with this car a huge amount, but I saw the engine was illegible, thought I'd give it a go. Again, another one without massively impressive statistics. 449 horsepower, so it's about 40 horsepower more than the CRX. 329 torque, a little bit more than the CRX. Weight, again, is a little bit more, 2,088 pounds, but we're still talking, this is about 600 pounds lighter than the Beetle that we're going up against, but we're down on power and down on torque. Again, another car that I had no issue with driving. Another pretty easy one. Starts off at rear-wheel drive, so we don't have the slightly scary oversteering moments that we often get with the front-wheel drive conversions. Tyre sizes, I think you may get a little bit bigger on here. You certainly can carry the corner speed with this vehicle. You also see all the vehicles here are running aero. The Beetle has silly aero, so I figured all of these cars here should also have silly aero. I'm around the outside of the barrels, getting it braked in to this into the next turn, and then we come up to the big test. This is where the CRX would lose its time. If the CRX was good through these corners, I think it would probably pose a serious challenge to the Beetle. You can see the AE86, you can just take different lines. We're sort of 90 miles an hour around that corner, where you were maybe 75 and you have to be a bit careful. In the Honda, with this you could absolutely fly around the final couple of turns, and it did make it a quicker lap time, 58.041. Now we're within 0.3 of a second of the Beetle. Second place from the challenge cars, if you like, the Nissan IDX. Again, another interesting one. Admittedly, this is maybe slightly not quite counting, it's a slightly cheaty car. While all the other vehicles were 1,600 or less, this one is 1,618. I mean, it would get rounded down to a 1.6, but yeah, technically maybe a tiny little bit too bigger an engine. But seeing as I didn't have, or seeing as I wanted something different, I wanted a little bit more variety, I figured bugger it. We're going to let the IDX run. I did a review on the IDX a little while back, and I didn't really well, it's an okay car, but it felt a little bit underpowered and a little bit heavy. When put up to this class, it's into S2. It's a much better car, much more exciting car to drive now. 516 horsepower. So the horsepower is the most powerful car we have here. It's right up there with the Beetle. We've got more torque in this as well, 443. The weight is a fraction heavier than the Volkswagen, 2,712 pounds, but it's not by very much. The PI, I think this is 2 PI lower than the Beetle. Yeah, this was a serious contender. And again, much nicer car to drive, very easy through here. You can see how neat and tidy you can be in the IDX compared to some of the other vehicles that you're struggling a little bit, again, through this next corner. It's a very, very easy car to drive, and we have the power, we have the torque to get some decent speed. It was 130 miles an hour into this first corner. It was a very quick car, but it didn't beat the Beetle. It did a 57.8, fraction off, which means we have one more wild card to play, and that is the Fiat 595 Abarth. This is a rather crazy car, if I'm honest. Quite suitable for rallycross then. It has the engine from a Punto. It is quite low on power though compared to some of the other vehicles. 386 horsepower, 339 torque. However, it is very, very light. Even with four-wheel drive, it weighs a mere 1,324 pounds. That makes it lighter than the Lotus 11. Very, very light car, this one, and as you can imagine, it is phenomenally fast accelerating. A really very, very quick car accelerating. The handling is not quite so good. While the IDX and the Volkswagen Beetle and the AE86 and even the CRX were all very easy cars to drive, this one isn't an easy one to drive. It likes to pick up its front wheel when you go through a corner. It's not so much oversteering this thing, it starts off with rear wheel drive, the Fiat, which means that when you make it four-wheel drive we don't have the same twitchiness. It is a little bit oversteering, but it's not too bad. It's the lifting up the front wheel through the corners. It doesn't quite have the same handling, certainly through the tarmac section, as the Beetle, but it's the acceleration. It's the acceleration that does it, which means that this car goes very fractionally, a 57.642 as opposed to the Beetle's 57.743. It goes a tenth of a second faster than the Beetle around the track, which means there's only one thing we can do, and that is actually race it against the Beetle itself. You can see off the line, I've absolutely ditched the Volkswagen. You can see it in the rearview mirror there. It shoots away, does the little Fiat. But then we come to the turns around this first tarmac corner. We just don't have the same cornering grip. You can see the amount the blooming Fiat is leaning. I chose a slightly different track for this race, just for a bit of variety. This one here has got some big jumps for the cars to worry about and some fast corners. Again, the Beetle, you can see it leaning around. The cars that I built here are all running rally suspension to try and survive the bumps, but that does mean when you come to the certainly the tarmac corner, it gets a little bit wallowy in the Fiat. The acceleration out of the corner though is phenomenal. We can draw up alongside the Beetle, and while I wasn't likely to have the grip to actually make that move stick around the outside, it was certainly worth a look. We get a little bit of airtime, a little bit of jumping across as we head towards the start-finish line. Then we come into the first turn. The Beetle can take such a nicer, tighter line than this car can. I just lose quite a bit of time on that first corner. and so the race progressed, with me catching up when we got to a straight bit and then struggling through the turn. This lap though, fortunately for me, the Beetle got things a little bit wrong, was just out a little bit wide. It allowed me to have a little pounce, or try and get along inside. Had a look up the inside of that corner, and then we have the acceleration, but I have so much of it I nearly end up in the boot of the Volkswagen, which is not what we want. I'm trying to take as much of a shortcut across there as I can, but I kind of screw myself over a little bit. We get a big scary moment across the jump. Yeah, that's not what you want to be doing with any car, let alone in a very small, lightweight Fiat. We're running wide, going through some trees. Keep your foot down, and everything will just about be okay. Having a little bit of a scary moment on that rundown. And truth be told, while yes, this Fiat is the very slightly faster car around the course of a lap, it is a hell of a lot trickier to drive. It's much easier to drive the Beetle at these sorts of speeds than it is to drive this Fiat. If you get things wrong in the Beetle, okay, you can occasionally get the Beetle sliding. If you get the jump really wrong, yes, it'll unsettle the car horribly, but it will do to anything. In the Fiat, you are on much, much finer margins with this car. You can't get anything even slightly wrong. You see here the Beetle gets things. If I'd done that in the Fiat, I probably would have rolled it. But the Volkswagen comes out the other side and was still neck and neck with me. As we leave the hairpin though, I've managed to get my car up the inside. I get a little bit of a push through the next corner and I can't save it. The Fiat goes round in a circle. Again, if I'd been in the Volkswagen and had that bump, I probably would have been okay. I'm not sure if it wasn't even a little bit of a lag bump in there. But the Fiat is on so much more of a knife edge, if you like, when you're driving the car, whereas the Volkswagen is a much easier one. But as we came up towards the closing stage of the race, things were still very close between the pair of us. You could see across the bumps the front of the car lifting up. I got things wrong big time into the first corner. Brakes on the Fiat are pretty good, as you would expect from it being so light, but I think the Volkswagen is probably just as good. The Volkswagen, I think, can get away with having bigger brakes on the car, whereas the Fiat just weighs a lot less. So they're both fairly even under braking. The Volkswagen can be quicker on the tarmac bit. I'm throwing caution to the wind through this far section. The Volkswagen that gets things a little bit wrong. I get things a little bit wrong. Volkswagen's going sideways into the hairpin, and I can use my acceleration out of the turn to just pull away from Volkswagen. In the end, I think he put it in a tree somewhere around here. You can still get things wrong with the Volkswagen. The chances are, though, the only time it's going to be where you get things majorly wrong is because of you've taken a bump a bit awkwardly, or taken a jump, I should say, a bit awkwardly. I mean, fastest lap time was incredibly close between our two vehicles, whereas in the Fiat you can just get normal corners very seriously wrong. So can you get a car with a 1.6 litre engine to go quicker than the Beetle? Yes, you can. For one lap, and then you'll probably stuff it in a hedge the next one. The Fiat, it is the technically quicker car around the lap of a track, but I would much rather drive the Volkswagen. The IDX is perhaps the closest that I built to actually driving like the Volkswagen. The engine is a tiny little bit cheaty in that one. The IDX is certainly easier to drive than the Fiat, but I'd still have the Rallycross Beetle. It is still just a nicer, more consistent, easier car to drive. You can get things wrong. It's not completely idiot-proof. If you push it too hard, you can have the occasional issue, but that's mostly with taking jumps at wonky angles. It will very occasionally step out on you when pushed really, really hard, but then if you're racing off-road, anything will, in all honesty. But there we go. That is it for this video, guys. So thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.